from John Withington. He's the self-styled disaster historian. I love that title he's given himself. He's written a book called A Disastrous History of Britain and details the many health crises that Wiltshire has seen. Of course, we're in the middle of our own pandemic now, and this has brought renewed interest on how our country and our county has dealt with the Black Death, the plague, cholera, smallpox and the Spanish flu in the past. Now, John even mentions that during one plague epidemic, Salisbury effectively became the capital of England. Listen to this.
King Charles II and his court decided to get out of London, where the last great plague was really raging, and so they fled to Salisbury, but after only a few weeks, plague caught them up, and then they had to move on to Oxford. So Salisbury got its little spell as capital, but only for a few weeks.
Now, one thing that we're all talking about a lot at the moment is vaccinations, and one of the first vaccinations was for the smallpox, and Wiltshire, of course, massively affected by smallpox as well.
That's right, yes. So in the 18th century, really, we had big epidemics, 165 killed in Salisbury in 1723, 176 in Caen, 1731 to 32. There was a primitive inoculation that started to be used in about the 1720s, but the strategy was to give people who were vaccinated, or more correctly, inoculated, a mild form of the disease. And so there was a lot of suspicion about it, because the fear was that people who'd been given this mild form of the disease might infect other people. And indeed, in 1753, there was an epidemic in Salisbury, and the authorities in Salisbury tried to ban this inoculation for that reason. And it was only actually later on, the early 19th century, when cowpox started to be used, that proved effective and was the basis for inoculating people against smallpox for quite a long time. And then the infection rate did actually fall very dramatically after vaccination came in with cowpox.
Are there any lessons, do you think? I mean, obviously it's always lessons we can take from history, but in the particular pandemic that we find ourselves in the moment, are there any lessons from history that we should really be learning?
During the Great Plague of 1665, the famous diarist Samuel Pepys wrote, "The plague made us cruel as dogs to one another." And in a lot of places there was evidence of doctors, the rich people, actually leaving, getting out of town. And this time round, you certainly couldn't accuse doctors of failing to do their duty with coronavirus, could you?
I think the other thing that's really uplifting here as well, John, is the fact that all these dreadful things that have come to Wiltshire and come to England, plague, cholera, smallpox, mankind has always found a way of overcoming these, and they have, in some ways disappeared, or we've found ways of inoculating ourselves against them. So there's a positive element of that too.
That's absolutely true. I mean, obviously, tragically, 35,000 people, official total, have died in the UK from coronavirus. But as you say, after all of those diseases that have afflicted us, plague, cholera, smallpox, Spanish flu, an awful lot of us are still here. And nowadays, smallpox is virtually eradicated. Cholera was classified as an exotic disease in the UK. Bubonic plague even is, as long as you've got a good medical service, is relatively simple to treat. Medical progress has gone on. The evidence seems to be that if human beings apply themselves sufficiently determinedly to find the answer to something, they generally do find the answer.
So interesting. John Withington there, who's a historian and writer, talking about the many plagues, many diseases that have come our way here in Wiltshire and how we've managed to overcome them in the past. And his book is A Disastrous History of Britain, with a lot of Wiltshire in there as well. So thank you, John, for speaking to me today.